Okay, so now that you have a good understanding of how to establish parent-child relationships and how they work between objects and objects, bones and bones, and objects and bones, we're going to start to move forward and get into a bit more advanced topics. Now, all the lessons that are going to follow until we get to the actual rigging process are going to get quite technical. Now, in all the lessons, we've been working with rigging lesson 01, G.blend. So we have not made any changes to this file. We're only using it to understand these concepts. So we'll keep sticking with this file. So what we're going to do is first understand how do we navigate quickly between these different modes when we are dealing with objects in the armature. The reason for this is when we go through the actual rigging process, we're going to be switching between these different modes. So when it comes to the figure object, we'll be switching between object, edit, and weight paint. And when it comes to the armature object, we'll be switching between object, edit, and pose. Now, go ahead and switch the armature to pose mode and click on the figure over here. Now, you can see that the figure can be in object mode and edit mode. Edit mode is where we get to move the vertices, faces, and edges. Now there's another mode here that we're going to take a look at later, which has to do with weight paint. This has to do with rigging and controlling how the vertices get influenced by different bounds. Go ahead and click it. You'll see that the figure is going to turn blue. So we're not going to do anything with this mode right now. I just want you to know that it's going to be object, edit, and weight paint. Okay, so go ahead and switch to object over here. Now, let's take a look at this concept first. If we want to switch between these modes, we can simply do it through this drop-down menu over here. But if we want to do it with keyboard shortcuts, we can simply click the Tab key to go into edit mode. And when you press the Tab key, it goes back to object mode. Now, you want to start taking notes here because this can get a little confusing. Now, when we are in object mode and when you do Control Tab, it's going to switch to weight mode. That's its default behavior. When you do Control Tab, it's going to switch back to object mode. So if you want to switch between object and weight paint, all you have to do is Control Tab. Now, when you press the Tab key to go into edit mode, you cannot do Control Tab. If you do Control Tab, it's just going to allow you to select vertex, edges, and faces, which is this thing over here. Okay? So, to get out of this mode, you have to do Tab. And it's going to go back to object mode. Okay? Now, if you do Control Tab to go into weight paint mode, and when you press the Tab key, it's going to go directly to edit mode. Now, when you press the Tab key again, it's simply going to go back to weight paint because that's where we came from. Now, if we do Control Tab to go into object mode and press the Tab key, it's going to go into edit mode. Okay? Now, press Tab to go into object mode. Now, let's say that when we are in object mode, we want to go to sculpt mode. Remember, when you do Control Tab, it will always go to weight paint mode. Let's switch to sculpt mode over here. Now, when you press the Tab key, it's going to go into edit mode. And when you press the Tab key again, it's going to go to sculpt mode. Now, when we do Control Tab, when we are in sculpt mode, it's going to go to the weight paint mode. Now, to go back to sculpt mode, you would do Control Tab. Okay? Now, the issue here is that when you do Control Tab to go into weight paint mode, and then press the Tab key to go into edit mode, now when you press the Tab key to go into weight paint, now if you do Control Tab, it's just going to jump back to object mode. So when you are in weight paint mode and switch to edit mode and go back to weight paint mode, when you come back, it just resets itself to object mode. It's a tricky thing to remember, but that's how it works. So this means that over here, if we switch to vertex mode and do Control Tab, it's going to go to weight paint mode, and Control Tab to go to vertex paint. So if we are in vertex paint, just like when we were in object mode, if we press the Tab key, it's going to go into edit mode, and Tab key to go into vertex paint. Now when we do Control Tab to go into weight paint, press the Tab key to go into edit mode, press the Tab key to go into vertex paint. Now when we do Control Tab, it should jump back to object mode. Let's do that. Control Tab. You'll see that it just jumps back. So it's the same thing for all these modes here. You can do the same thing with texture paint. Same behavior. Tab key edit, Tab key vertex paint. Control Tab weight paint, Control Tab texture paint. So if you go to Control Tab weight paint, press the Tab key to edit mode, Tab key to go to weight paint mode, Control Tab, it'll just jump back to object mode. Okay, so that's how it works. I advise you to spend a little bit of time with this concept so you can get used to this idea. Now let's take a look at this armature over here. So when it comes to the armature, it basically works in the same way, but because it only has 3 modes, it's a lot simpler to understand. Of course, if we press the Tab key, it's going to go into edit mode. And if you press the Tab key over here, it's going to go to object mode. When you do Control Tab, it's going to go to pose mode, and Control Tab is going to jump to object mode. Now, when we do Control Tab when it's in pose mode, press the Tab key to go into edit mode. What happens when we do Control Tab in edit mode? Remember on the figure when we did Control Tab, it was showing us a menu. So if we do Control Tab, you'll notice that it just goes to pose mode. Okay, so in the armature, when we are in edit mode, we get to use Control Tab. So notice what's happening here, right? If we go and switch this back to object mode, when we do Control Tab, it always goes to pose mode. Tab key, edit mode, Control Tab, pose mode. Then if you do Control Tab, it'll go to object mode, Tab key, edit mode. When you do Control Tab, it'll just go to pose mode. Control Tab, object mode, Control Tab, pose mode. Okay, so that's how it works here. Now I'm going to show you a bit of an advanced concept here that has to do with the outliner. This is a bit tricky to understand. You might find this useful. We might actually even use this concept a little later on. So if you click on this figure over here, go ahead and shut this off. Here in the outliner, we get to select the objects. It's obviously going to be in object mode. If you click on the armature over here, you'll notice that it jumps to object mode. Go ahead and click on the figure. Open this up. Now if you click on the data block for the figure, it'll automatically jump into edit mode. Okay? So of course, if you do Control Tab now, it'll do the same thing. It won't let you do it, right? It's going to show up this menu. So you have to do Tab to go into object mode, do Control Tab to go into weight paint. Now if you go ahead and click on this figure, it'll just jump to edit mode. So this is a quick way to jumping to edit mode on the figure, a mesh object. Okay, now go ahead and open up the armature. Now in the armature, you'll see that it says armature in pose. Go ahead and click on this armature. You'll notice that it jumps to edit mode, and you can see that it has this gray circle around it. If you click on pose, it's going to jump to pose mode. So this is another way of doing this. Okay, now if you want to switch back to the object mode, let's say we've clicked on this armature and we're in edit mode, you can simply click on armature again. It'll jump back to object mode. It's the same thing with the figure. Click on this edit mode, click on it again, it'll jump to object mode. Okay, now what's important to understand here, it works a little differently when you're switching between objects. Meaning that if we click on the figure to go into edit mode, and if we click on the armature, it'll go directly to edit mode. Now remember, we are already in edit mode on the armature. Go ahead and click on the figure. Now click on armature. Notice that it just switches very quickly. Now go ahead and click on pose. Notice that we are already on pose now, okay? Now click on the figure, it's in edit mode. Now you can see that it's leaving this gray over here showing you that it's already in pose mode. Of course, if you click on pose, it's going to switch back to object. Now you have to click it again to make it come back to pose. Meaning that it just keeps this selected, right? So if you click on the armature, you can see that it's selected. But when we switch to figure, it's not selected anymore. So when we click on armature, it just switches to edit mode. But when you click on pose, it's selected, switch to figure. You can see that it's still selected. When you click it, it goes to object and then pose. Okay? So now when you clicked on the armature and click on figure over here, go to pose, it'll just jump to pose. But if it's already selected, then it's going to deselect it. Anyways, that's how that works. So go ahead and just reload this, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.